Hogwarts Legacy will release on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC on February 10th or February 7th if you have the Deluxe Edition. Now, when it comes to PC, there are the PC requirements, and providing that you meet those, you can adjust the graphics settings and adjust the amount of frame rate you'll be getting depending on those graphics settings and your PC specs, and you'll be able to completely customize the game and be able to get the frame rates that you desire. Whereas when it comes to consoles, obviously it's a little bit different. Now, with the new generation of consoles, generally there's some more customization options when it comes to frame rate and graphics, and in today's video we're going to be going over how that will work with Hogwarts Legacy. So let's get straight into the video. So as we did just mention, when it comes to PC, the game is pretty much customizable by yourself. You won't have two different modes which you switch between. You'll just be able to configure all of the graphics settings, and you'll be able to cap the frame rates to the frame rates that you desire. For example, you may have a fairly mid-range PC and you're playing on a 1080p monitor, therefore you're going to put the graphics to maybe medium graphical settings, and then you'll maybe cap the frame rates to 60 frames per second. But when it comes to console, obviously you don't get the options for all of this. Generally speaking, with next generation games, you're either going to have just the one graphics mode that you can't switch between and it's just the game itself, or you're going to have two different modes which you can switch between, or in some cases you will have three. And the Hogwarts Legacy developers Portkey Games have actually confirmed how it will work with Hogwarts Legacy on the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S consoles. So, Portkey Games have said exactly this. The PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S console versions of Hogwarts Legacy support multiple graphical modes of play, the most common of which are Fidelity mode, which targets 30 frames per second, and Performance mode, which targets 60 frames per second. So as you can see, it looks like it's going to be the pretty standard graphics options that we get with most next generation games now. However, one part of that I would really like to point out is that Portkey Games did say that they will support multiple graphic modes of play, but the most common of which are Fidelity mode and the Performance mode. Now, I have to say I do find that interesting, since that could mean that there'll be many more, and I'll come up with a few ideas for what that could be later in the video. But we do know that the main modes which most people will probably use are the Fidelity mode and the Performance mode. The Fidelity mode will be the higher resolution and the higher graphical settings, although you might find that the Performance mode has the higher resolution since it won't be using ray tracing most likely, so chances are that Fidelity mode is just going to be the best graphical settings and possibly the higher resolution as well, although sometimes the Performance mode does have the higher resolution. Since it's at a lower graphics option, it's able to go to a higher resolution, if that makes sense. And of course the Performance mode will have 60 frames per second, which I think is what most people will want to use. 60 frames per second just makes the game feel so much smoother compared to 30 frames. But of course, if you are playing on a massive 4K OLED TV, then you might want to go for that Fidelity mode. But like I did mention, it does also say that there will be multiple graphics modes, but the most common are the Fidelity and Performance mode, like we just mentioned. So I do wonder what those other modes could be, and I do have an idea that I'm going to go through. But first of all, I want to show you guys how a Performance mode and Fidelity mode would work within the game and how you would be able to switch between the two. So to do that, we're going to head into a different game so I can show you how this would work. So let's head over there now. So here we are in Ghost of Tsushima, and you're probably wondering why. Well, this is because I can show off what a graphical the graphical options could look like in Hogwarts Legacy. Now, over in the display settings on Ghost of Tsushima, we have the option between a higher resolution or better frame rate. Now, if we play on the higher resolution, then we're not getting, the frame rate isn't as high, but we are getting obviously the higher resolution, and we're getting lower frames per second, but we're getting a higher graphical capabilities. Now, if we go ahead and we switch this over, going back to display, and then we switch this back to better frame rate, then we're going to be getting a smoother experience, but the resolution will be lower. Now, this should only really affect people that are on a 4K monitor, or possibly 1440p. Now, I'm on 1440p, and I'm not really noticing any sort of difference. However, I'm using a 1080p capture card, so that's probably the reason why, actually. However, now it's interesting that, this is probably what we could see over on this Hogwarts Legacy when it does release. Now, as you can see, we're getting the two options here. However, if you do remember me saying, there are actually going to be more options. It's not going to just be these, or at least that's what it does seem like. But I did just want to show that, this is how it could work. You're able to just switch between the two graphical options, and this does look slightly better in terms of graphics. But then again, if we go back and then we go back to display, then we can quickly switch between the two. Better frame rate doesn't look quite as good. I can already tell a little bit. It looks slightly lower in graphical quality, but we're getting higher frame rates. So I would say the higher frame rate is always the better option. But if you're on a 1080p monitor, then you're not really going to need the graphics option anyway, since the higher frame rates will still be getting you the best graphical capabilities. Generally speaking, you might not be getting ray tracing, but it shouldn't make much of a difference really. So yeah, I would always say go for performance mode, but it's possible that there are actually going to be more than just the 2 graphical options from the way that Portkey Games did word it. So I'm going to go into another game and show you how I think it could possibly work with more than just the 2 options that we usually see. So here I am I'm in GTA 5, or well, GTA Online, and the reason I'm in GTA Online is because with the expanded and enhanced version of the game on the next generation consoles, there's actually 3 graphical options, or at least there are on the Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5. I'm pretty sure on the Xbox Series S there's just the 2, but either way we have 3 here. Now first of all we have Fidelity. Now Fidelity is the best graphical capabilities. We're going to be getting ray tracing, ray traced reflections, and we're going to be getting the highest resolution. However, as you can see, there's a bit of an issue here. We're getting 30 frames per second. Now, for some people, 30 frames per second is absolutely fine. And if you're on a big TV, 30 frames per second is pretty, that's pretty alright, to be honest. You're going to be able to play the game just fine. It's certainly a playable experience. I think 30 frames per second in most games, other than really first-person shooters, is a playable experience. And if I had to play on 30 frames, which I do on some games since they don't have next-generation versions, and I'm able to manage with that just fine, it doesn't really bother me, since after, a couple of minutes, you get used to it, really. And, you get used to not having the 60 frames per second on the game. Now, if you wanted to play in the Fidelity mode, then you have the option. The reason I'm showing this is because this is sort of what we could see in Hogwarts Legacy. Maybe there will be more. From the way they worded it, it sounded like there may be. But obviously, don't get your expectations that high, since it could just be the 2. But either way, we then have performance ray tracing. Now, performance ray tracing won't always get 60 frames per second. And this is what I wish we saw more of in next generation games, where you're not guaranteed 60 frames per second all the time, and you're still getting ray tracing. You're not getting the ray trace reflections or the highest resolution, but you're still getting some ray tracing, and you're getting the uncapped frame rate to 60 frames per second. So as you can see right now, it's already a higher frame rate. We're not necessarily getting a steady 60 frames, but there's no sort of stuttering. And if it drops down to the 50s or 40s, then that's fine, since that's still playable in my opinion. And we're getting a higher graphical quality. But if you just wanted to stay at 60 frames per second with little to no drops, then you've got the performance mode, which has the lowest graphical capabilities with no ray tracing or anything like that. But you're getting a steady 60 frames per second pretty much all of the time. Now, this is what we could see, something similar to this in Hogwarts Legacy. Now, obviously, we need to bear in mind that we're using the variable refresh rate and everything like that. But, it'll be interesting to see how it will work. And I just thought it'd be cool to show you these 3 different options here and the way that this could work. So there you go. That is how the performance and fidelity mode could work within Hogwarts Legacy. And obviously, I've also showed you there an idea of what the other graphical modes could look like if there are others. Considering the way that Portkey Games did word all of that, it sort of sounds like there will be others. But we will just have to wait and see when the game does release if that is the case. Now, this isn't actually the only thing that Portkey Games have commented on. They've also mentioned in the same article about the variable refresh rate, and they have said this: graphical modes for players who have variable refresh rates VRR supported TVs or monitors are supported for Hogwarts Legacy on PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S. So providing that you have the equipment that can enable VRR, and providing that you obviously have it enabled on your console, you'll be able to access that within Hogwarts Legacy and it will be enabled. So this is really a nice feature to have, to be honest. It's nice to be able to see this within Hogwarts Legacy, along with having those graphical options as well. Now, to make sure that you do have the variable refresh rate enabled on your PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X and S, there's a few things you're going to want to go ahead and do, or well, just one thing really, but there's a few options you're going to have to select. So on both your PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S, you want to go to the settings, then you want to go to the screen and video options, and you want to go to the video options and make sure that you have the variable refresh rate, or VRR as it might be labeled, turned on, providing that your monitor does support it. And once you've done that, you'll be good to go to have variable refresh rates enabled when you play Hogwarts Legacy. Now, I do just want to take a little bit of time to talk about the Xbox Series S, since over there things could be a little bit different. Obviously, it isn't able to achieve the same graphical capabilities when compared to the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5. So this does mean that you probably won't be seeing ray tracing over here, and also it is worth bearing in mind that the Xbox Series S only supports up to a 1440p resolution. So it's possible that for the fidelity mode, you'll be getting 30 frames per second at 1440p with no ray tracing, and then for the performance mode, you'll be getting 1080p with 60 frames per second. Now, it is also possible that there will be no 1440p option, but it will just just have to wait and see how that will work out with the Xbox Series S. But either way, there should be an option for 60 frames per second. I think that is pretty likely. But I just want to take a little bit of time there to talk about the Xbox Series S, since things may be a little bit different over there. So that is everything that we know about the settings for the graphics and frame rate when it comes to the consoles for Hogwarts Legacy, or at least when it comes to the next generation consoles. We'll see how things work with the older consoles and the Nintendo Switch when we get to those releases. So if you do want to stay up to date with all the latest Hogwarts Legacy news, tips and tricks, then be sure to like, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any content just like this. We are getting very close to the release of Hogwarts Legacy on the next gen consoles and PC, and I'll be posting loads of videos on this channel to keep you all updated. So I'll see you in the next one. Peace.